It's looking more and more likely that Daniel Ricciardo's time in Formula 1 is coming to an end. Going into the Singapore Grand Prix weekend, rumours emerged of Liam Lawson being signed for 2025 in place of Daniel Ricciardo, and also rumours of Daniel being dropped after the Singapore Grand Prix in place of Liam Lawson for the remainder of the season. Now, Ricciardo was asked about his future, and to be honest, not only did he not deny any of the rumours, but he also gave off the feeling of a man who knows that he will be leaving RB at the end of the season, and potentially Formula 1 altogether.
I can't until after the weekend. I think that's when decisions will be made, and that was, obviously us that know the contract, that's kind of where the dates fall. So I know how it is and how it works, and I knew there was always going to be some, let's say, dates and deadlines this year, whether it was like summer break or now post-Singapore, so that's post-Singapore's the next one. Yeah, let's see how the weekend goes. Obviously, I'm going to give it all I can, as I have, and there's always something to fight for. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Try and get the thing on the podium. That's my plan.
And now, the reason why all of this is coming out now is because, as Ricciardo kind of hinted at, and as has been known actually for quite a few months, Liam Lawson has a contract with Red Bull that basically states that if Red Bull don't pick up his option by the end of September and give him a full-time seat in either Red Bull or RB for 2025, then Liam Lawson becomes a free agent. Now, not only is there still a seat available for 2025 at Sauber, but we know that Sauber/Audi did show interest in Liam Lawson, so he potentially could be a real option for that team and potentially a real asset that Red Bull could lose. This is why there has been a ticking clock all season long for Red Bull to basically finally decide on what drivers they're going to have at Red Bull and RB for 2025, and who out of Perez, Ricciardo and Lawson is going to be out of Formula 1 at the end of the season. There's no doubt that 2024 has been a mixed bag for Daniel Ricciardo. I think it's important to remember the context that coming into the season, the expectation was that Ricciardo was going to beat Yuki at RB, and he was going to be the one to put Perez under pressure to potentially be in that Red Bull for 2025. However, given how volatile, crazy and inconsistent this season has been for pretty much every single driver and every single team, well, apart from Sauber that is, who have just been consistently terrible from start to finish, it's basically meant that the favourite of who's going to be in that Red Bull and who's going to be in that RB for next season has kind of changed every couple of races. At the beginning of the season, Daniel was nowhere near getting into that Red Bull. This was a period where, if we remember, Red Bull were actually dominating this championship, and even Checo was backing Max up pretty consistently with podiums, whilst in RB, it was Yuki who was dominating Daniel, scoring points 6 times in the first 8 races. However, once we got into the European leg during the mid-season, this was the point where McLaren, Ferrari and even Mercedes started to really challenge Red Bull, and Checo was seriously starting to cost Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. This also coincided with Daniel finally picking up some form, scoring points in Canada, scoring points in Austria, and if we remember going into the summer break, this is where Checo had his meeting with Horner because it wasn't even clear if Checo was going to see out the remainder of this season, let alone next year. I think it was around Spa time where Ricciardo's stock and the probability of him potentially going to Red Bull was at its highest. However, ever since then, 2 things have happened. Number 1, RB have really regressed in terms of their performance and have been overtaken by teams like Haas and Williams, and this has meant that Ricciardo hasn't had the tools to be able to score points or even get any big results that can show to the likes of Marko and Horner that he deserves to go to Red Bull. And the second thing that's happened is that the Red Bull has also fallen off a cliff, which has actually been an advantage to Sergio Perez. As the balance issues have got worse and worse and Max has started to really struggle, Checo has got a lot closer to Max Verstappen, and what's happened over the past couple of weeks is that the spotlight that at the end of August was completely on Sergio Perez has now shifted almost entirely onto the RB20. Even the team has now admitted that Checo isn't even their primary focus, as it's all about sorting out the RB20 not just for this year, but also for next year as well. These 2 things in combination have basically meant that the team isn't looking to replace Sergio Perez because he is no longer the biggest issue of the team, and Ricciardo also hasn't shown enough in the eyes of Horner and Marko to deserve to replace Perez. It's actually quite crazy how fast perception can change in Formula 1. I mean, this Sergio Perez that's now closer to Max Verstappen is the exact same Perez that mid-season was basically massively under pressure to lose his seat even for just this season. And it also works for Daniel Ricciardo because the Ricciardo that was kind of picking up points mid-season is the exact same Ricciardo that's not picking up points now. However, Ricciardo also kind of hinted at this, saying that if he somehow gets a podium in Singapore, which isn't impossible because the RB does look like it's a little bit stronger and you never know, it's Singapore, maybe there's some crashes at the front, maybe there's some chaos and maybe Ricciardo ends up on the podium, then maybe he's back in pole position to get that Red Bull seat. That is how quickly things can change in Formula 1 and it's not always in the hands of the drivers. Regardless of which driver has had the momentum throughout different points of the season, the bottom line and the truth of it is that Daniel Ricciardo has not done enough to warrant to get into the Red Bull. He has been beaten by Yuki Tsunoda on average this season, and so on principle alone he doesn't deserve to have a promotion over him, and that is why him at RB has troubled me so much this season. That team as Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, RB or whatever it's going to be called tomorrow has always been there to facilitate and give a chance to younger drivers. If Daniel Ricciardo is not going to go to Red Bull, then what is he doing at that team? He has chosen himself multiple times over the past couple of years to turn down seats at other teams, so we know that he's not looking to just stay in Formula 1 at another team, he is looking to only get into that Red Bull. And so if he doesn't deserve or warrant to get in there, then all he's been doing so far this season is blocking a seat for younger talent. That's what this team has been all about. We should be seeing the likes of Isaac Hadjar, Liam Lawson up against Yuki Tsunoda, all battling it out to be in that Red Bull by putting pressure on Sergio Perez. If Daniel Ricciardo had been beating Yuki Tsunoda throughout the entirety of this season, then I think he definitely would have warranted a place on the Formula 1 grid because, as I've always said, as long as you're beating your teammate regardless of the circumstances or regardless of your age, then there always means that there is at least one reason for you to be at that team. However, he isn't. He hasn't been better than Yuki Tsunoda, and thus at the moment, as much as I do think that he is a great character for Formula 1, and as much as I do think that he will go down as a bit of a lost talent who never really in his prime got the opportunity in a championship level car to really fight for the world title, he just doesn't have a place in Formula 1 anymore. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.